Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo, and welcome back to the petting paddock. Today we're going to finish our children's zoo with an alpaca experience, a Hermann's tortoise habitat, a tortoise show and tell experience with an educator, and our first ever kids playground, and we're going to build something really fun for that. Let's go! We've got a lot of things to build today to accompany the goat and chicken paddock that you can see on the left and the entrance that we built last time. So we're just going to lay some paths in here so we can get a rough layout of where all the various different elements are going to go. And then we're going to start by building the alpaca experience. You can see the flamingo pool and the water terraces just behind here. So rather than using the big old barn that we built a couple of weeks ago, we're going to go with one of our normal cattle sheds for this area, because I don't want any of the children's zoo to be visible from the water terraces. We need a really low profile on this side of it so that we don't spoil the sort of sleek modern lines of that area. Behind Australia we can get a bit higher, as you can see there. Now the alpaca paddock's going to be very similar to the goat and chicken paddock that we built last time, so I'm basically going to skip almost the entire build of this bit and just show you some of the little bits of detailing we're doing, like a little tractor tire on this wall here, and then some of the enrichment items and things like that. And we're going to dress this stable up a little bit by putting some of the rustic pieces on here. But the main part of today's episode is going to be concentrating on Hermann's tortoise and the kids' playground. Those are two things we've never done before, and it's going to be a lot more exciting. So we're just going to drop some more hygiene stations in here for the guests so that they can pet the alpacas. And that's the alpaca habitat pretty much done. We will of course take a look at that in a lot more detail at the end of the video. Let's get on to the tortoise exhibit. So this is where the Hermann's tortoise exhibit is going to go, and you know what we do with the exhibits in this zoo, we're always trying to disguise them and make them look much more realistic and much more interesting. So what we're going to build today is a really rustic wood and mesh exhibit, which is going to be pretty tricky considering the exhibits are made entirely out of glass and metal, but that is what we're going to do. It's going to be quite a challenge, but I think with enough detailing we're going to make it work. So we've got two exhibits next to each other here. We're going to get them right back up against the fence that leads towards the Australian area, and then we'll go into the exhibits and start playing around with them. So with two identical exhibits next to each other, we'll drop some tortoises in so we can see what the backdrop's going to look like, and then we'll start playing around with all the different elements and work out which way round do we want to spin each exhibit to make the contents of the exhibit make as much sense as possible, turning on and turning off all the different pieces until I've got a layout I like where it feels balanced and it feels like one long habitat, which is what we're going to be going for here. So this is based on the habitat I saw in, I think it was Suaby Zoo, which I think is here in the UK. Not a zoo I've actually been to myself. I just saw a cool Hermann's tortoise mixed aviary sort of habitat, and that's good because these exhibits are 4 meters high, so basing one on an aviary for tiny little birds that had Hermann's tortoises wandering around at the bottom is going to be really useful. It gives us an excuse for why this Hermann's tortoise exhibit is so high. I'm not going to put any birds in here because we're going to be really close up to them, so I don't want to use any of the prop birds when we're going to be in this closer proximity to them. The first thing we're going to do is get some angled wood planks in to form the base of the habitat. And this will also cover up the black metal base of the exhibit piece itself. So we'll just rotate these and then put these ones underneath and slightly behind the ones above, and then copy them down again, and we'll get a similar effect to what we had in the treetop trail. I really like wood when it's like this, gives that kind of a shed kind of vibe, which is really sort of low budget rustic habitat this. It's going to look really cool in this children's zoo. And then we use these temple pieces so that there's a base underneath the exhibit where it sits on top of the ground. These paths that you can see, this will all be covered up with tarmac later on, but you always see this with any sort of wooden build that needs to be stable and around for a long time. They tend to have a small concrete base underneath them. If you've not seen the first part of this build, by the way, I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. We built the goat and chicken petting experience and the entrance to this petting zoo as well. This temple piece here needs a bit of rotating. The ground isn't exactly flat here. I really don't want to do all the pathing in this area again, so we're just going to slightly adjust the rotation on this temple piece to make it fit in nicely. And then we're going to move on to the next issue we have with this exhibit, namely that because it's got glass sides, the terrain in the exhibit, the sort of dirt-sand mixture, is actually pressed up against the glass. You can see where it's rising up against the glass. Now obviously if this is a mesh habitat, then dirt is not going to do that, it's going to fall through the mesh. So what we're going to do is put some wood planks in that go right up to the top level of where the terrain is, and that will prevent it from looking like it's up against some glass. So we use these planks as boards to achieve that, and then it's onto the mesh. So what we're going to do is take one of the mesh pieces and place it onto the glass, and then move it so it is just like 1 pixel in front of where the glass is, and then center it on the habitat, and then we're going to copy it on top of itself and move it so that we've got even smaller mesh than we normally have. The sort of mesh we'll normally see in habitats like this rather than the much wider mesh that the game gives us. That also provides even more coverage on the glass and disguises that. And then we're going to put some planks in to actually hold up the roof of this exhibit. We'll have 5 vertical planks in the end, which just helps to disguise the fact that this is 2 4-meter boxes together. Put a few planks on the roof, and then we'll start colour matching everything so we can start to make it look cohesive. There we go, looking good. Let's move on to the inside. So I really like the 3D rocks that you can get at the back of the exhibits. I really do not like the sort of plain blue background above it. So we're going to cover all of that up with some more planks, and that's going to further sell the illusion that this is a completely wooden habitat with mesh sides. Get rid of some more of the sort of standard in-game elements, and we'll cover up the join between the exhibits with those as well. And this is starting to look vaguely decent, but it needs a lot more work. So we'll move on to the inside. We're going to put a wooden ceiling in and some cross beams and things like that, just to cover up all the metal at the top. It also covers up the lights as well, which you don't really need because we've got heat lamps down there and we're outside, so lighting shouldn't really be necessary anyway. And then we're going to move back on to the outside and sort out some access for the keeper. So we'll cover up this half of this side of the habitat with some more planks. And then we're going to put some doors in. We'll put this African door on both sides of it so it looks like the keepers can get in and out of the habitat. And we'll put some stairs in as well so the keepers can get up here. And then we're going to concentrate on covering up some more of the glass. So I've covered the whole middle area of the 2 exhibits with some more planks. Then we're going to delete a couple so it's like a little hole that the tortoises can get through. And we'll further sort of sell that idea by adding a little ramp in to both sides so that the tortoises can climb up here and get into each side of the habitat. It'd also give the zoo a way of splitting tortoises up if they needed to for any reason. And then we're going to build a little house for the tortoise to go inside the habitat as well. I saw a lot of little shelters for tortoises. They like that, presumably for hibernation and things like that. Even if it's indoors, they just seem to like to have a little gap to get into. So we're going to make a really simple little house for them. I think it's like 5 pieces or something, but it's all we need. The whole thing is built out of these pieces from the Twilight pack, and we're just going to move these. It looks massive because that's how big these pieces are, but all we're going to do is drop this into the habitat and bury it into the substrate, and we've got a really cute little home for the tortoises. You can see how tiny they are here. And after that, just a couple of finishing touches. We're going to grunge up this wood with a decal. We're going to drop one of our custom signs in here, and that is the Hermann's tortoise exhibit done. I think it sells the illusion pretty well. Next stage is to get an animal talk point in. One of the things I've always wanted in the children's zoo is an animal experience where the keepers will get one of the animals out of their habitats and show it to the guests, and Hermann's tortoise is perfect for that. So we're going to take an animal talk point and then we're going to disguise it. We're going to put it under a water tower and then cover this bit up with one of the milk churns, or 2 of the milk churns rather, because it's a bit taller than them. And then we're going to change the colour and we end up with something that really fits in nicely and you can't see the animal talk point at all. With that done, we're quickly going to move over to the other side of the zoo for a minute, because last week we built a prairie dog habitat that was meshed over, and I got so many comments from people who have never seen one with mesh on it. So I thought I'd take a look at what it looks like without the mesh, and what do you know, I actually prefer it. And now this is the prairie dog habitat that we have in the zoo, and I'm very happy with it. So thank you for all your comments. I think between us we've made a much better prairie dog habitat. Now let's move back to the petting zoo and make something really cool, a chicken bouncer for the kids. I'm not sure if these are actually called bouncers or springers or what, but you know what I mean. One of the things you get in children's playgrounds was an animal with a spring attached to it that the kids can sit on and bounce around on. I noticed that the chicken sign in the game is the perfect size to make one of those, so I thought it'd be really fun to try and make one. So what we're going to do is copy the chicken sign on top of itself loads and loads of times until we've got what looks like a solid piece of wood with a chicken painted on it. And when we've got it looking the way that we want it, we'll copy the whole thing again to the other side so that we got 2 sides to the bouncer. And then we're going to find some tiny wood pieces and make a little seat for the kids to sit on. They won't actually be using this, obviously, there's no way to get that to happen, but I want a group of these in the children's playground. I think that's going to make it sit in really nicely with the rest of the build. We're going to find some more tiny wood pieces to make the handles where their hands and feet go. And then I'm going to try and make the spring as well. So you can see my first attempt in the background, which I made with the rope pieces, but I figure we can make it look better than that with these gutter pieces. So we're going to copy a load of these up here, and then we're going to take one and spin it to a different angle, then start copying that down again. And that gives us more, I think, of a sort of springy kind of look where you can sort of see through it, unlike with the rope. Then we're going to use these, I think the light fixtures, just to make the handles look a bit better. And then I've switched out the wood for a different, even smaller piece of wood that's recolorable so we can get the seat to fit in nicely with everything else. And there we have a little chicken bouncer. The bouncer will be available as a separate item to download on the workshop as you watch this. But I've got something even more exciting for you, which is out right now, and that is a new building kit. If you search for the Barnyard building kit on the workshop, I've created a new kit which contains loads of the stuff from this build. We've got the barn, the entrance archway, the dry stone wall, the animal talk point cover, loads of other stuff, and of course the chicken bouncers, so you can make your own barnyard areas very quickly indeed. Let's get on with the rest of the kids' play area. So I'm using the mud panels to make a sort of that kind of rubbery texture that you get on kids' playgrounds so they don't break anything if they fall off stuff. I've got some logs and our animal sleeping log, because that's big enough for kids to crawl through, thanks to Planet Zoo's hitboxes. And then we're going to use some more wood just to create a nice white surround so that it stands out nicely against the rest of the area. And then we're going to cover the whole thing in concrete. So all of the more rustic children's zoos and petting zoos that I was looking at in my research basically just had concrete or tarmac floors. I guess this is an area for kids, and the last thing you want to do is spend loads and loads of money on every aspect of the area when they're basically going to be happy if they've just seen a chicken. And also, much as I like the grass that I plastered everywhere just to make it look nice for the cinematics in the first part of this build, having this much lush grass in Southern California is going to be expensive, and zoos aren't going to spend that much money on the in-between parts of a children's zoo. That being said, I'm going to keep a bit of the grass around the entrance here. It's only just like a fairly small kind of lawn, and then we're going to put some of the new picket fence pieces down, coloured these brown to go in nicely with all the rest of the build, and we'll just lay these along both sides of the entrance gate. Again, it's just got that nice rustic feel that we want for this area, and it's always fun to use new pieces anyway. And then we're going to apply the finishing touch to the kids' playground. So I feel like no kids' playground is complete without a slide. And I just happened to see on the workshop this incredible children's playground made by Wix. I think it's #1 on the workshop as I record this. He is an absolutely incredible builder. He normally does more fantasy kind of stuff, but he is just as good at making realistic stuff. So I'm going to steal the slide from his blueprint because it's got quite a rustic look to it anyway. I'm going to drop that into the kids' playground and move everything around to accommodate it until I'm happy with the layout. On to the last part of the build, which is just making the whole area look really good. So I'm going to build a little sort of display here with the rustic well piece, a tree, and then some plants. And we're going to make the borders for it using a modified version of the dry stone wall. So I've just got the top of the wall here. We're going to make a really, really rough circle with it so it still looks pretty rustic. And then we're going to just go around and delete the parts that stick out until we end up with a charming little circle that isn't quite perfect. I figure in this barnyard area that a not quite perfect circle would be kind of fun. We'll fill in the gaps in the middle with some of the circular mulch pieces, always the best pieces to use to get this kind of soil effect. We'll put in one of the new plants and then one of the old plants, and then a load of these cornflowers, I think they are. I love this little blue flower. It's definitely my favourite flower in the game. On the rare occasions that I have flowers rather than plants anywhere, it's normally these. They look so good. Just need to move this bush just to get everything lined up and looking good. And then we'll drop a few final plants at the back to break up the join between here and the water terraces. And that is the petting paddock done. Let's check it out. Here we go, from Australia to the barnyard. Everything is done and looking rather nice. Here's the view from the entrance, got a new little sign on that, and you can see Hermann's tortoise in the background. Here's the view across the kids' playground. We've got a new Roman Ices van in the background as well. There's a little water feature, which I forgot about, in the kids' playground, and here is the alpaca paddock. These guys are so cute. I said this in the trailer video, but the fur simulation on the alpaca is something else. It is so good. They are the fluffiest animal I've ever seen in a video game, that's for sure. Here's the Hermann's tortoise habitat. Very happy with how this one turned out. Let's check them out. These guys are really cute. I didn't realise how small Hermann's tortoises were until I built this. You can see the little gap for them to get from one side of the habitat to the other, and we've even got a backstage, which is very rare for one of our builds. Here's the animal talk points, with the keeper showing the tortoise to the kids. The petting paddock is done. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's check out the Explorers Club monolith. Thank you to everyone who has joined. Hit the join button on the channel if you want to see your name up here. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you next week for some more Planet Zoo.